Okay, everyone. Right, you're joining us for our final fireside chat on stage 2 of Procurement and Supply Chain Live 2023. Again, a big hello to everyone who's watching virtually, all our virtual delegates, and everyone who's watching on demand as well. So we are finishing up today our fireside for our final keynote of the day with Navigating the Supply Chain, a fireside chat on procurement strategies at CH&Co, where we again return to the hospitality sector, which has been a good sector for us this afternoon. And we're joined by Sam Davis, Group Procurement and Supply Chain Director. So a warm welcome for Sam, please.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to start, Sam, with sustainability. It's been a key theme all the way through today, really. Looking at how you've gone about your transformations, how has sustainability been part of that? How key a brick in that particular wall?
I think for us, obviously, we do food catering and we do everything from education to business and industry to hospitals and leisure and events. Sustainability is absolutely key, especially in procurement. And it's almost for us, it's the bedrock of our ESG agenda. So when I look at our carbon footprint, supply chain is about 99.6% of all Scope 3 emissions I'm responsible for. So it's a huge part of what we do. And it's not just on net zero, we're talking about higher welfare, we talk about diversity in our supply chain. So for us, it crosses so many different sectors and so many different areas of our business. So within the remit of what we look after fleet. So we're looking at, we've just moved all of our company cars across to hybrid and electric. I mean, that in itself was challenging because as we were coming out of COVID, there's not been enough electric or hybrid cars and the delays getting those through. So for us, especially within catering, a lot of our clients are now demanding more on the ESG agenda.
How do you go about breaking that down into different sections? As you say, you cover a wide variety of areas and you can't do all of them all at once. How do you go about prioritising which areas to make changes to first?
So we sat down when we were building our 2020 strategy and for the next 5-6 years, and we sat down and looked at our key pillars of what we're doing. So within our business, we have 4 big key pillars. We've got our net zero plan by 2040, we've got creating a culture of CSR, we've got food waste, and then we've got the greenest supply chain. And that's the element that we look after in procurement and supply chain, is that bit. So it's about reducing delivery miles, it's about, as I said, higher welfare, it's about balancing all of this with obviously cost, that's a huge part of it. It's about doing the right thing. And then that is broken down into lots of different subsectors. And CH&Co is made up of a house of brands. So we have a education brand, we've got a commercial brand, which is leisure, so the likes of something like Kew Gardens, we look after them. And we've got B&I brands, workplace brands as well. So with each of them, we engage separately with our business to talk to them about what's important to them, to then help us build an overall global supply chain strategy for ESG.
You speak of balance. If I was picking a word that's been used an awful lot in this room, apart from supply chain or procurement over the last 2 days, balance would have been one of those key words. Whether you work in the hospitality sector or any other sector, there is always that balance between sustainability targets, which may actually cause friction against cost targets. What advice would you have of trying to balance those two in a time where cost is very important at the moment?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, inflation is an awful word, and I think I've looked back in the last 3 years, and I say they've probably been the most challenging in my procurement career. I've never seen anything like it coming out of COVID, then with all the supply chain issues everybody had. People going on strike, not having enough delivery drivers, all the way through to the Ukraine-Russia war last year, and then the impact of climate change on, availability. How do we balance it? I think the way we look at it is we've been trying to do really simple things, and it's really getting down to that granular detail. So if we want to be higher welfare, chicken, for example, and buy RSPCA, yes, it's really expensive. Yes, it's in very short supply, but what we're suggesting to our teams is downsizing the portions that they use. So instead of buying a 7 to 8 ounce chicken fillet, they might buy a 6 to 7, and then using that platform to buy a higher welfare. And then it has the great balance is that actually we're reducing our carbon footprint as well at the same time. So it's about trying to find ways of balancing the cost versus doing the right thing and being sustainable. And I think when we look at our supply chain and we're bringing in more social enterprise businesses, so back to doing the right thing, supporting local economies, what we're actually finding is with our support and nurturing them and bringing them along, the quality of those products is actually better than some of those that we buy. And actually, when you start to drill down to it, the expense of those products is the logistics side of it, because they're small businesses, they don't have that scale. So we help them by introducing them into our larger supply chain and our supply partners, such as Bidfood, to help leverage the costs, so then to make it affordable. So I think my big thing coming out of COVID, and I know everyone's promised they'd never speak about it again, is that it's a real strength of supply chain collaboration with smaller suppliers as well. I think we saw during 2020, 2021, lots of small businesses either go under, and then equally we saw quite a lot come out of the other side of it, where people had a chance to reassess their lifestyles, they followed their dreams, built businesses, but they wouldn't necessarily understand breaking into retail or hospitality what it takes. And so we have really spent a lot of time trying to nurture small suppliers, bring them on board, bring them into our supply chain and give them that support to then help alleviate the price pressure as well.
Again, you mentioned inflation a moment ago, which that was a slightly long-suffering expression there. Again, whichever sector you work in, it's a key consideration at the moment when it comes to procurement. How have you been going about coming up with strategies to try and soften that blow? Because the last thing you want to do is be putting prices up for anything.
And I think it's really tricky for us because obviously, especially in our workplace, we've got our clients are trying to get people back to work. So they're really nervous about putting any tariff increases up. They want to be seen to be more competitive than the high street because they want to keep their employees in the buildings. They want to feel that it's a place of well-being and nurturing. And we're seeing a lot of clients actually offering free food programs to encourage people back. But what we've been doing is working long-term with our supply chain. So we build long-term relationships. We're looking at sourcing direct and upstream. So we've just done a deal on our bacon, for example, right in the middle of when pork prices were going through the roof. And what we try and do is leverage and talk to them about packaging and logistics and pack sizes and all the things that seem very obvious, but it's the things where you sit down with a supplier and they say to you, well, actually, you're taking something that's bespoke. And we go, okay, fine. So what do we need to do to help leverage you to get to the prices you need to get to and the prices we need to get to? What if we weren't bespoke? What would that look like? How could we leverage that? We've done things like look at our supply chain and the logistics, so reducing the amount of deliveries that are going in. So not only does it have a great CSR story, it also has a real positivity for our supply chain as well. And that was really felt during COVID, where, you know, the true cost of delivering to sites really came out, and the expectation that people were just going to deliver 4 pints of milk and a loaf of bread, it started to disappear. And so we've worked with a lot of our supply chain on minimum order quantities and values, looking at drops. Can we consolidate so that we've got more items going out on vehicles? So effectively reducing the logistics, and given that petrol prices and issues with drivers have been absolutely prevalent over the last couple of years, that's how we've helped leverage our inflation. But, you know, we're not immune to it. We've taken inflation like everybody else, but what we try and do is talk to our suppliers about buying in bulk, increasing the order quantities that into our wholesalers as well, where we've got unique lines that for us that we will take in containers for, etc. So it just makes it more possible with the logistics to bring those costs down as well.
When it comes to technology, though, how do you go about picking the technology partnerships you go with to try and help you realise your procurement strategy?
So we've taken a couple of good technology systems. We've used Authenticate, actually, which is linked up to our transparent supply chain and our ESG. And they, in terms of the tech that they're using, and we're using a lot more, getting data and everything, it's been really key for us. And we're looking at artificial intelligence. We're even looking at when we were going through the labour crisis and we couldn't get staff to do, weight tables and things. We even started to look into robots. So we've done some trials with those as well. And I think technology it shouldn't be overlooked, especially in the supply chain space. We're looking and working with our suppliers to do AI in terms of ordering so that we can help with forecasting. And it's almost like having to get people to trust in the process. I think people see technology come along and they're like, they're going to use it to get rid of people. And it's not that at all. It's becoming smarter. We've spent a long time adopting Power BI in our business, and it is literally a game changer. I mean, I have over 1,000 suppliers, and just having all that data at a push of a button rather than having to email out to every individual supplier and ask them for their details is absolutely phenomenal. And we use a lot of tech systems in terms of our tills, our ordering platforms, interacting with our clients. So it's been massive for us, and I can only see that improving, and more tech going in just means that it will help the information feed for us as well.
Because you can get piles and piles of data. How important is it that you actually use it to a tangible benefit at the end?
I get shared quite a lot of data. I think for me, it's about having the relevant data. So in terms of a sustainable supply chain for us, the sort of data we want to get out from our suppliers and the products we buy is where do they come from? If I look at meat, for example, what the animals are fed on, all the way down to is it from an area where, if it's produce for an area of deforestation or water resilience, that's the sort of data we're being asked for. And it's actually quite difficult to get our supply chain to engage with that. I think there's a real reluctance to share data because people think that you're going to use it for commercial gain. I really wish I had a huge procurement team that had plenty of time to go out and find out where suppliers bought their baked beans from. But it's not relevant to us. But what we want to understand is makeups of products, where they come from, our suppliers, how diverse they are. We've got a lot of our clients ask us about diversity of our supply chain, and actually trying to get that information about the products we buy has been really challenging because people don't hold it and they don't want to share it. And I think the whole ESG agenda is breaking those barriers down to saying, we need to understand carbon labelling, we need to understand the packaging, because of all the regulations we now have to do and all the commitments we have to do as part of the governance in ESG, data is absolutely key for us to be able to do that.
You did mention the pandemic very briefly, and I will also mention it very briefly because it is the elephant in the room, isn't it, to a lot of things. What lessons did you learn from it, and what things have been done differently since?
It is possible to run a team, a very skeleton team, and be very stressed out over a period of time, but it's not sustainable. And I think that would be a big lesson, is you prioritise the priorities in the middle of a pandemic, and it actually shows you all the other stuff that you used to do, it kind of falls to the wayside. I think we've taken is supplier collaboration and partnership. I think we got through it because we had great suppliers and vice versa. And I think it was challenging the status quo. We certainly shook things up during COVID because we had the opportunity to do it. I think the difficulty is we were making great changes, but without a team there to communicate it to. So a lot of our employees were on furlough because a lot of workplaces were shut, and then they came back to an entirely different supply chain, and it was trying to get people back into that. So that was pretty difficult, but I think it is really challenging the status quo. A lot of our chef community would still want 5 deliveries a week, and we keep saying to them, why? you know, and now we can show them the benefits of it. And I think for me, it was collaboration. That would be the biggest thing that came out of COVID for us.
Okay, there's more questions I'd like to go through, but I will go to the room quickly. Any particular questions from the room based on what we've been talking about so far? Nothing immediate? Okay. The last thing going back to the pandemic, is there anything you would do differently now? Hindsight is a wonderful thing.
I think for me personally, it's probably a bit better delegation. It was difficult because you were running at 100 miles an hour. But I think, would we have done anything differently? I think we did the best we could in the circumstances. I think we completely overhauled our supply chain in the middle of the pandemic. We consolidated a lot. I think hindsight's an easy thing, but actually I'm trying to look forward on what we're doing now. I think it gave us a chance to reset where we needed to be, which was a positive thing.
And looking forward over the next 12 to 18 months, where do you see things going in terms of your procurement strategy?
We've got our greener supply chain. We've got sector-specific supply chains as well. So that's for us, is making sure each of our brands has got something that's unique and particular for them. For me, it's a real big focus on social enterprise and diversity in our supply chain, and making sure that we're reaching our commitments on our greenest supply chain. So whether that's our carbon footprint or our higher welfare, again, still balancing that out with cost into the business as well. I think inflation is going to continue into next year, slower, but I still think it's going to be there. And I think it's about getting people to understand that is now the true cost of goods.
Yeah, the new normal, as we have said on several occasions. Sam, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Round of applause for Sam, please.